This webinar is organized by the AUIS Student Services. My name is Lauren Siran and I am the Student Services Coordinator. Today we are hosting our two amazing staff members, Ms. Lizan Majid from Records and Registration Office. She works as the Records and Registration Coordinator, and also Ms. Sara Jabbar from the Executive Office. She is the VPAA Executive Coordinator. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we start, I would just like to remind our viewers that if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so now so you do not miss any of our webinars. So again, welcome guys. Thank you so much for doing this, for taking the time of your day. First, I'd like to give you both a chance to do a brief introduction about yourselves. Ms. Lisa, would you like to begin?
Yes, absolutely. Firstly, thank you, Kaklawan and AUIS for this opportunity. My name is Lizanne. I work at the registration office as the registration and record coordinator. I would like to give a little bit of information about myself. I grew up in UK. I finished most of my studies there, and I finished my bachelor's degree in business and IT in 2009 in Buckinghamshire Charlton University. In 2010, I came back to Kurdistan for the first time, actually, and I started working at AUIS. As some of you would know, we were in the old campus back then. I was here for a few years, and I moved on with my life. I started a family. I have two wonderful boys. And then I went to Erbil. I was working as the Director of Administration, HR, and Business at the British International School. And I was there for quite a few years too. And then I decided to come back to Sully, my hometown. And my family had moved back from UK as well to Sully, so it had made sense to move back. And that was in 2008. 18, pardon me. In 2018, I moved back to Sully. I started at AUIS working, and I started my MBA program at the same time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lizan. You mentioned some things that intrigues me to ask you several questions afterwards when we get on with the questions. Sara, I would love to also give you a chance to introduce yourself, if you please.
Yeah. Hello. My name is Sara Jabbar. I used to be a student at AUIS. I joined in 2013 and I graduated in 2016. I majored in business admin and then started working at AUIS a year and a half after I graduated. I did some advertising for a while at Leo Burnett in Slimani, and then I decided that I want to go back to AUIS because we love it here so much. And so I took up there was a position announced for a coordinator in the Office of the Dean of Faculty, which has changed now. So so right now my official title is the Executive Coordinator to the Office of the VPAA. So I work with Dr. Wolfgang, which I'm sure everyone knows, as well as Rachel Gresk, Dr. Rachel Gresk. And yeah, this is what I do.
Thank you so much, Sara. So one thing I would like to mention before we get on with the questions is that the purpose of this webinar in particular is to show the AUIS community that our alumni are actually working here. They have a reason for working here, and also there's a reason for AUIS to choosing the AUIS alumni. I believe currently we have over 25% of staff of alumni working at AUIS, and of course there is a reason, and then we are going to discuss that reason today. To get on with the questions, Ms. Lizan, so the couple of my first questions applies for both of you, so I'm gonna ask you the questions and I'll start with Ms. Lizan for her answer. My first couple of questions, so what was the reason behind applying for a job at AUIS? Ms. Lizan, you mentioned that before you worked at AUIS, you went to Erbil, and then once you got back to Slimani, again, you applied for another job at AUIS. What was the reasoning behind that application? Why did you want to work here?
Well, when I joined in 2010, I actually came back for a visit, and AYS catched me so much that I ended up staying here. And that was alone. All my family were in UK. AYS has a mixed culture environment, which I personally really prefer to work in. And it's obviously it has a very clean atmosphere in the offices, and all of this matters as well. But in terms of the people and the student and the colleagues, these all have an impact. And I think having to have lived in UK, and when I came back, I was not so familiar with everything here, but AY's made me feel at home. And I think the main reason was because it is mixed cultured and everyone here is quite friendly. We're engaging with each other. The atmosphere is welcoming.
I totally agree with you. I used to be a student here at AUIS as well. For the ones who don't know, I started studying at AUIS in 2013. And in 2018, when I graduated, the first thing I wanted to do, my first aim was to come back to AUIS at any case. I mean, for whatever reason, maybe in the future, if I wanted to teach, come back to AUIS as a staff member. And so for the 2 years in between my graduation and coming back to AYS, I tried my best to keep up with job postings, to get to know to the people here, just so that the first opportunity I get to come back here and work in this system that they have built here, which matters so much. Sara, I'd also like to address the same question to you. What was your reasoning behind working for AUIS or applying for a job at AUIS?
So, like I mentioned, when I graduated, I first took up a job in advertising. And as much as I really, really enjoyed it, I learned a lot. The working hours were crazy because advertising is like that. I would visit campus from time to time, either for homecoming or, to get my transcript and things like that. But what I really, really enjoyed about life at AYS in general was like Lizan mentioned, the diversity. The students come from all sorts of backgrounds and locations, and they all speak different languages. But another aspect that I really enjoy, and this is more professional, I would say, is I like how things are always so systematic here, as opposed to things that I've noticed with specific companies, let's say. We have different departments, right? So we've got the admin side, we've got the academic building, we've got building D, and we've got really organized administrative departments that work really well together. And that's something that I really enjoyed, just from a professional aspect as well, just because I want to learn from a bunch of different departments and see how they all come together to make an institution a better place in that sense. So that's something that really drew me to coming back here.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. My two next questions are kind of a follow-up question to the first question, and they're follow-up to each other as well. Ms. Lizan, I'd like to first ask you, if you could please explain what your department does, and then briefly describe what you do at AUIS, please.
Sure. Well, our main goal is to provide the best of what we can in accordance with the policies that we have in AUIS to our students, to our amazing students, to our staff, and to our faculty. Our department does quite a lot. It does involve quite a lot in that term. We have, of course, our student information system where we manage, we maintain, we monitor across to all our students at AUIS. In accordance, we provide orientation to our students and faculty along with the registration team. Another aspect is that we collaborate with the Ministry of Higher Education to ensure that our students are in the right major, to ensure that they have the approval, to follow up on students and make sure that in the future they're not faced with any complications. And of course, the other parts of where we provide the services we do is policies and procedures for our students, the regular registration processes, all the thing that comes with the registration process, the classes, the scheduling. So in the background, there is quite a lot involved. It's not just in the front end what we provide. And not to forget, all of this is not just for our students, also for our alumni. It continues with our alumni. And then moving on to what I do, personally, as my job, I take care of the records mainly. Like I said, the big part where we are collaborating with the ministry, that is a long process and is a continuous process. I also do the orientation for students, and my colleague Leha does it for the faculty. And we deal with all the policies and procedures that we announce to students, the processes, updating them, announcing them, working with the students alongside of it. And of course, the daily visits from our students and email inquiries.
All right, perfect. Ms. Lizan, I know that your office is usually swamped with students, especially during registration times. I can't imagine what you go through. I'd like to ask, what is the most common question you get from students, and what is the answer once and for all, so that everyone gets it?
Well, on a funny side, where is Dr. Asso? That's the most common question that I get, and I don't know. I really don't know where he is. But really, it does get quite stressful in there, and we do try to be calm and collective. But it can get quite challenging at times. I think the most relevant question I can think of right now is I cannot register for a class because there's no seat, and students tend to get a little bit stressed about that, and I wish that in advance, even though we do announce it through our emails, but maybe most of them don't read it thoroughly and they don't get that. We as registration office, we would love to support you and help you throughout the process. We understand how stressful it gets, but adding an additional seat, unfortunately, is not in our hands. It's in the hands of the chair, and the students have to get in touch with them. And then usually, in most cases, they do increase the cap and support the students. But I've had many cases where students have waited for half an hour, 40 minutes just to ask us such a question, and they've ended up missing their other classes. So my advice will always be, please read the emails carefully, so that you are registering without you being stressed at times, and try to get the seats that you can, and if you can't, where to get support.
I totally agree. In AUIS, if not the most important way of communication, one of the most important ways of communication is emailing, because you will always get an answer. But if it's not written, there's always some misunderstanding or miscommunication in that between. Sara, coming back to you, I'd like to also ask you to please briefly describe what your office does, and then also briefly describe what you do at AUIS.
So whenever I get this question, I always say that there's a lot that goes into it, much like all other departments as well. So we do a bunch of different things. What we do is we address student and faculty inquiries. That's on one hand. On the other, we also apply to grants and make sure that there's funding that we can acquire for the university. We most most of the time address student questions as well, just because they have very particular questions that they need answers for that their chairs or faculty might not be able to answer. On a more individual level, what I do is I'm always running between building A and B, and I think that's it speaks for what I do. I bridge the academic side and the admin side, right? So anything that our faculty or students have, questions about, I would probably know what they would be able to do in building A, where to go, what to do, what the procedure is like, and that sort of thing. And then something that's, just to the side is, and Lisa knows this because we worked for a couple of years on this, is I manage the MBA program. So MBA students come to me for questions. I do most of the scheduling. We get, with our HR team, we book them flight tickets and that sort of thing. So I take care of the logistics side. I proctor exams from time to time. Really, it's just like a wide array of different things that come together and make this office what it is. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that description. I know that you are a business major graduate. We had a couple of classes together. In particular, Dr. or Mr. Pat Klein's class, accounting, which was insanely difficult for me, and you were getting aces in all of those grades. Yeah. I'd like to understand what was your reasoning behind choosing business as a major at AUIS.
So I came into AUIS not knowing that I can choose a major and then change my mind. So for the first semester, for the first year, actually, I was an engineering student. I decided to take a management course, a principles of management, and then realized that I can change my major. And that's what prompted me to do so is I always think that business admin has a lot of applications, and there's a lot of ways to venture into different fields through this degree. And that's something that I really enjoyed because I learned a bunch of different disciplines: marketing, accounting, finance, supply chain management, a bunch of different things. And I feel like it's a very flexible program in that sense, because I can decide in the future what industry I want to get into and then build on it as I go. So I really enjoyed that with our program. The business department is great. Like you said, Pat Klein's class was very, very difficult, but we managed it. We're here, so we're still alive. Yeah, so that's probably the main reason why I wanted to do this. I didn't have friends who did business as much. Everyone sort of ventured into different programs, but I think that helped me focus on my classes in a way. So yeah.
So I think out of the three of us, Miss Lizan has the most experience since she'd worked at AUIS in 2010 and then changed different jobs. I'd like to ask you, Miss Lizan, how would you describe the work environment at AUIS, and how would you compare it to other places that you've worked at?
I think returning back to AUIS after 8 years of being elsewhere speaks for itself. Having said that, my previous jobs have been, they were also exciting, they were challenging, we had a great atmosphere. But I think what I've realized is that I have a passion for education, and being at AUIS gives that, because we try, it doesn't matter what department we are and what we do and what our job titles are, we always just see the graduation of the student and we just try to get them there. And I think AUIS does that really, and they try in every way possible to get a student to see them on that stage. And that's important, right? Because we don't think, for example, I don't think as if, and I'm sure none of you or all of our other staff, that we're not an academic or we're at administration, or, I mean, I personally have had students asking me questions and I've guided them, even though it's not been part of my job, but just to give them that feeling that we're all one team here with a student and try to get them where they deserve. And the environment at AUIS is my ideal environment because it's engaging, it's friendly, it's mixed cultural, and this is all important. As you get older, I think it makes more of a change to be at a place where all of this is combined. It's not just about a high salary, and it's not just about a high position. Everything else kind of fits into its place and it matters.
Absolutely. I mean, now that you mentioned how all the community tries to get those students from point A to B or to get to graduation, I remember that last year when we had our commencement in September, during one of those meetings, the consensus was that it is all about the students, no matter what happens in the country, how difficult it is, we have to get those students what they are aiming to. And I also, in particular, I remember Dr. Wolfgang talking about how this is their day, and we have to do all that we can to get them on that stage. And I was so happy that we were able to get those students, those 80, 90 students, including yourself, Miss Lizan,
One of
yeah,
them.
during those difficult times, everyone was able to just have their moment. Sara, I would like to come back to you and ask you about what would be some difficulties of your job, and then how did your major or studying at AUS have prepared you to adapt to those difficulties?
So one difficulty that I wouldn't, yeah, it is a difficulty. One thing that I try to do that I used to struggle with, especially when I first joined, was prioritizing what I have to do, because I get new tasks on my to-do list every single day. And how I used to do them was I would go from top to bottom, first in, first out. But I learned, and this is something that I also learned, I guess, in my studies, is how to prioritize what you have to do first, to make sure that that's out of your way, and then move on to the slow or small tasks that wouldn't take up as much of your time. Deadlines are really important, so making sure that you prepare ahead of time for those deadlines is something that I'm trying to do, that I wasn't able to manage as well in the past. In terms of what I learned from my program or from my degree is, I guess I just learned how all of these little bits come together. So for example, our communications department, I see a lot of, everything that we've learned in principles of marketing, for example, in what they do. Finance, whenever I get a budget question or whatever, I instantly think of our balance sheets, right? And so it's those little things that do play a really big role in you understanding where you work and how things are done. But I would say that a large component of what I had learned over 3 years now, I've been working here for 3 years, is everything that you learn while you're at work as well, and making sure that what you learned in the past is also complementing what you're learning currently, and then strengthening those two together, and then hopefully working to the best of your abilities. So they're both complementary in that sense. I really, really enjoy that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. For me, studying at AUIS always taught me how to look for answers, and we're gonna get to that. My last question will be on that. Will be on liberal arts and critical thinking for Sara. But before that, obviously, Ms. Lizan, nor me, neither Sara have experienced our master's program. So, if possible, could you briefly talk about the master's program at or the MBA at AUIS, and also obviously you were working at AUIS and then you applied for the master's, you finished master's, and you're still working at AUIS. What would you say some of the differences are before and after the studying at the MBA at AUIS, please?
Well, when I started my master's program, I literally had signed a contract to be at the registration office full time. That itself I mean, going through the MBA was the most difficult challenge that I have faced in my life. And that's not because of the program itself. The program itself is well set and it is well planned, and the teachers are supportive, and you will gain a lot of knowledge and experience from their experience. But having to have a full-time job, and I already had a son and I was pregnant towards the end. It was a challenge, and Sarah knows. But the reason I'm mentioning this is that anyone in any, not particularly in Sully even, but anyone who's interested in our MBA program, and this is not advertising, this is from personal experience, they can do it just like I did. Even if they're a mom and they're a woman and they have other responsibilities, it is doable and you can do it. And now that they've programmed it for weekends, I think this is ideal for anyone outside of the cities to join us. I remember during my studies, a lot of my friends in Erbil were asking me if they could join, but because we had until 10 p.m., it was a little bit difficult. But I think it's great that they've changed the schedule to weekends so that other people in other cities can take advantage of this. The courses itself was 17 courses. And I remember the first course, I was saying to myself, how am I going to finish 17 courses? It's just too much thinking about it. And I guess there's a phrase where they say time flies when you're having fun. And that's what it was. We were having fun while we were learning. And I think that's enough for me to say about the program. I absolutely recommend anyone to take on the program and not to freak out and think, oh my gosh, it's just not possible. It's just too lengthy, because I know other universities have shorter programs for MBAs. But you will really get to a point and think, oh my gosh, I've only got a course left. Because you will enjoy it as you go along. Yes, you will face some difficulties, but you are learning, right? You only learn from difficult things. And how has it helped me? I think one thing, Kakla, and I would like to mention is that education, my perspective, is not just about knowledge. I think why is it important to continue studying or taking on MBA program later on in life is that to remind you of your ability and the skills that you have within you. And once you complete it, you will feel that you are capable and that you have confidence. Of course, you're reminding yourself of the hidden skills that you've had, like your communication skills. So how has it shaped me better in my job? I'm able to have a more analytical skills, a more calmer mind. I can see perspective better. I can communicate better with our students and understand their perspective. Because remember, I went back to education after 10 years. So that was a good reminder for me to bring back the skills that you can use in your career that you sometimes forget that you've had.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for such an elaborate answer. I totally agree with you. It's crucial, the points that you raised. With this will lead me to my last question for Sara as well. In terms of our programs and our studies, I want to just get your thoughts about liberal arts and critical thinking, which AUIS focuses on so much. Many students, even outside people from outside of AUIS, don't really get the idea of liberal arts, of the importance, for example, taking classes such as Civ 101, Civ 102, why you have to do math if you're studying international studies. I'd like to just get your perspective. And also after that, yours, Ms. Lizan, too, on liberal arts and critical thinking.
It's the biggest question at AUIS. Yes. I like to think, why do I have to take math, right?
Yes.
So I'll be very honest, I didn't understand it either when I first joined. But as I graduated, I did. Everything that you learn is, especially our core curriculum, you have different classes in different fields, mathematics, history, English, research, whatever. All of these courses that we've taken in the beginning have shaped not just how well we performed for the remainder of our years at AUIS, but also in the future as well. Liberal arts education does equip you with the tools that you will need to succeed in the future. Critical thinking, particularly, is something that I don't think you can just learn with one particular course, right? It's something that you build over time, and I think the core curriculum really helped with that. I can now make decisions that are not based, that are objective decisions, right? So I analyze the situation independently with all the facts presented, and then I make an objective decision based on what I think is correct. And I think this really helps our graduates when they are out looking for a job. There's a reason why our employability rates are so high, is because I do generally think that AUIS graduates have the ability to not just sit and do routine work at a workplace every single day, right? But to actively contribute to a workplace and make sure that what they do is meaningful and is customized to what the company is looking for and that sort of thing. So it's a combination of different things again, but it's something, it's a really important skill to have, not just as a student, but also for your life in the future, your professional life in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I would like to also mention the importance of critical thinking and understanding systems and also institutions and organizations when you work at them. For example, a place like AUIS, when you study at AUIS, you don't really have much information or an idea about how things works in between the departments. But when you finish your classes and you come back to AUIS, work as staff, you immediately grasp the idea of how different departments can work together or how the system works. And I think that's solely an evidence of how critical thinking could help you understand systems, institutions, organizations better. Ms. Lizan, what is your perspective on liberal arts and critical thinking, which are two very important subjects at AUIS?
Well, like Ms. Sara said, I think when even not just in workplaces, but even outside, when you see students from AUIS, you see something different. How they act and how they think and how confident they are, and the way that, right, critical thinking is the nature of knowledge, right? It's something that you can carry with you for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean that you might have to apply it at your first job if you're not given the capacity, but it is something that it is a necessary skill for the rest of your life. And I think at one point, one stage in their life, our students will apply these skills. It will come useful to them, and they're going to think back and say, thank you, AUIS, for this. And to be honest, even I did when I finished my MBA. When I finished my MBA, I thought there was a lot of hidden skills that I didn't think that I did have, and now I can apply them.
Brilliant. Critical thinking is the nature of knowledge. I just love that sentence. Thank you so much. My questions end here. Thank you both so much for attending this webinar. Thank you for the attendees who have been with us all along. Thank you for staying with us. I'd like to give you also an opportunity if you have any closing statements. Go ahead, please. I'll start with Ms. Lizan again and then go back to Sara.
Well, thank you so much, Crack Leben. Thank you to our students, to all the AUIS family, and I look forward to working with you furthermore.
100%. Sara?
Likewise, thank you for having me. Yeah, it was great. Thank you for the workshop.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, again. Have a great afternoon and goodbye.